They're both going to be competing in front of scouts. Yesterday, they were running practice 40s in a conference center hallway. It shows just how cool it is and how funny that is, because at some point in their career, they're going to have mansions and they're going to have pools and they're going to have whatever they want. But the day before the biggest moment of their professional careers, they were running wind sprints in T-shirts and shorts in the same conference center that a waste management conference could be going on next week here in Indianapolis. So very cool to see those guys the day before the big day. Waste management, that's what I picked, huh? Well, you see where my head's at. That's what I think, Kyle. Instagram.
The first time when you said that story, the first two guys that came to mind were Rich Eisen and George Kittle out there in the hallway running sprints for that 40. It's all very exciting. Wishing those two best of luck. And Trace, we'll get back to you in a little bit. Kyle Brandt and Nate Burleson holding it down here in New York with the lead block.
Lead block.
Let's do it. And let's start with the team that holds not the #1 overall pick. That's, of course, the Bengals. At 2nd overall in the 2020 NFL Draft, the Washington Redskins will be at the podium trying to change and establish their future. They've got a new head coach in town. It's Ron Rivera, and he has yet to fully commit to his second-year quarterback in Dwayne Haskins, saying the team isn't ruling out drafting a quarterback next month. What? Take a look.
We're not closing the door on anything. One of the things that Kyle and I talked about is that we have to go through this process because you don't know. You don't know what's going to happen in front of you. You don't know what's going to happen with you. So we're going to go through, and your Tua is one of the guys that we're bringing in, just so everybody knows. Okay, we're bringing in Burrows, we're bringing in Tua, and we'll see both of their workouts. I mean, that's just the way it is. I mean, you just don't know. So we're going to prepare. We're going to get ourselves ready. We're gonna obviously look at some of the other players. We're gonna look at Chase. We're gonna look at the corners. We're gonna look at everybody.
I feel like every team says the right thing. We're going to look at everybody. Is this weird to think they might take a quarterback back-to-back a la the Dolphins with Rosen, who now they have Fitz and Rosen and
Cardinals. And before that, it was the Cardinals. Yeah, it was Josh Rosen who was with the Cardinals. And then they went that next season after a coaching change, mind you, where Cliff Kingsbury comes in and says, you know what, we're going to go ahead and go with Kyler Murray because I feel like he's a future. No, this doesn't surprise me at all. It's not like Dwayne Haskins went out there last season and absolutely shut the door on the conversation on whether he should be the franchise quarterback or not. I feel like Ron Rivera has been through this long enough, especially everything that he's been through with Cam Newton recently. He understands he's going to give his team the best option, which means you're going to explore every single option out there.
I think they're looking hard to deal. You know, our buddy Daniel Jeremiah said that it looks like Burrow's 1, Chase 2, and Daniel's quote was, the draft starts at Detroit at 3. I think it starts at Washington. I think it starts at 2. I think they're movers and shakers.
Really?
Because if Burrow does go 1, like, Washington's got pizza and beer. They can deal you Chase. They can deal you Tua. Like, they are in a position of power. And I think there's a lot going on with those Ron Rivera quotes. We love Ron, but every single one of those guys there's a politician. They know exactly what they're saying. Right. And I think the idea that, of course, we're bringing in Burrow and Tua because we might draft them. They may have zero intention of drafting Burrow and Tua, but they want people to think they will. There's a rule, an unofficial rule, in the world of The Bachelor and The Bachelorette, where the Bachelorette with her suitors is not allowed to say on the air, I love you. It's forbidden because it blows the rest of the season. We'll be like, oh, well, she's obviously going to pick him. Ron Rivera is not allowed to say I love Dwayne Haskins in this sense because then they know they're not drafting Tua or Burrow. I think they're going to be action makers, shakers.
So who should move up then and be targeting quarterbacks in this draft if it's not the Redskins?
It's a great question because the only thing better than trade action for the Redskins is a bidding war. Because if you have teams like the Chargers and the Dolphins, not to mention ones further back who might be coming for a Tua, they also have teams you're not even thinking about, like the New York Giants, who are like, you know what? We're going to trade up for Chase Young, and we're going to get him at 2. Gettleman is capable of anything. So it's like, that's why I keep thinking they could just take Chase Young and be like, we're set. We're going to get an A for all our draft grades. I'm going to love us. Or we could also be open for business. And I think a lot of teams, Miami, San Diego, L.A., I guess, and the Giants could come up and get either of those guys.
I agree when it comes to L.A. They're the ones that come to the forefront when I'm thinking about trading up and trying to make a move.
Yeah.
I know
Anthony Lynn was on the show yesterday, right?
Yeah.
Tyrod, we love him. We love I don't know.
That's our guy. He doesn't turn the ball over.
They pick at 6.
He's our dude.
You think L.A. might be moving up?
They could be. I mean, this is all hypothetical, right? But I do feel like with what Washington has, the little bit of promise that Dwayne Haskins showed last year, and you think about who they got last year. Was it Montez Sweat, who was as fast as anybody?
First-round pick,
in the
Nate.
combine, first-round pick. You add that with Chase Young. I don't see why they wouldn't just grab Chase Young and stick with that. You got two of the fastest dudes coming off the edge. And you know what it is, man. When it comes to this division, that NFC East, you want to get after quarterbacks. And they got two dudes that can do that if, indeed, they do go with the Chase Young route.
We talked about the Dolphins, so they're sitting there. They pick before all of those guys. They pick at 5, the teams you're mentioning. How much pressure does even what you just said put on that team down there with Brian Flores looking for his guy to make his wave in the AFC East to move up even further just to block those other guys out? Because if you're sitting there at 5 and you're saying the Chargers are going to trade up and maybe move above the Redskins, or I mean, they're going to have to move up just because now.
I know. And it's like the pressure is, all right, so we're at 5. Let's hedge our bet. Let's move up to 4.
Okay.
But then the Chargers say, all right, well, then we'll move up to 3 tough guys. Like, you have to move all the way up because you could be standing there and someone's running in with a card saying, oh, my gosh, the Chargers just moved up to 2. Yeah. So if those 2 guys are all in for a drafted quarterback, you almost have to go to 2, but that is going to be so expensive, like franchise-chasing King's ransom. It's nuts.
Which really isn't that surprising when you think about the draft and the history that we've been through on this show. We were all surprised when the Chicago Bears moved up. It was a shocker.
For Trubisky all the way up to 2.
All the way up
to number 2. I think that they felt like they had to do that because other teams were going to trade up. So that's the name of the game. Schrager's out in Indianapolis. What do you think of Ron Rivera's words? Would it be crazy to think he might take a quarterback and then the Redskins would do that back-to-back years?
That was a really good conversation on it. And I think Nate's last point there about what the Bears did with the 49ers. Remember, the Bears traded up 1 spot and had to give up a draft pick, and they had wanted Trubisky. And, you know, the 49ers played a bit of liar's poker and said, well, we actually like Trubisky too. So the Bears said, okay, we're going to go up and get him. That could be what we're doing here, a little maneuvering. But if you're the Washington Redskins and you were the second worst team in the league last year and you drafted a quarterback 15th overall, it's a little different than if you drafted a quarterback 1st overall or 2nd overall. There were 14 players selected before Dwayne Haskins, and he didn't exactly light the world on fire. So you have the opportunity to do your due diligence, to meet Joe Burrow, to meet Tua, to get to know these guys as well as you want because, hey, if this blows you away and these 2 kids are the face of the franchise, you say, okay, Dwayne Haskins, we're going to meet with these guys. We're going to be upfront. We're going to tell you that we are going to have engagements with them pre-draft. Does that light a fire under Dwayne Haskins? What does that do for your starting incumbent quarterback that Ron Rivera signed on to be the head coach for? I think it's all very fascinating, but I don't think Ron is necessarily 100% bluffing here. I think you meet with Tua, you meet with Burrow, and you give it a 2-month process, and maybe you see how Dwayne Haskins responds to that because I want to get the most out of that guy. And in the meantime, let's get to know what these other 2 options are because, hey, top 2 pick, you never want to pick there again. The last time they did, they took Robert Griffin III. They had their quarterback. He was Rookie of the Year the first year. Who knows? Maybe it's Tua, maybe it's Burrow. That's why it's draft season. It's the best time of year.
I like those points, Triggs. Thanks. We'll get right back to you. I mean, it's a pride thing that's involved in this as well as an organization. Like you're admitting that you screwed up or that it wasn't the right fit for your team if you take a quarterback. Again, is it a bad look for them if they do go that direction?
I hope they don't because Peter's saying 15 is not number 1. It's also not number 32. It's 15. It's a big pick last year. Dwayne Haskins, you're our future. And I think it's very different than the Arizona thing because Cliff Kingsbury had a history with Kyler. He was infatuated with Kyler. His dream was to coach Kyler. They hired Cliff to draft Kyler. There's no connective tissue at all between Ron Rivera and Tua. I hope they stick with Haskins. He started 7 games and they're done with him? That's it? But this is the guy? When it comes to a GM picking a guy and say that GM gets fired after 1 season, the head coach is still attached. He's still handcuffed to the quarterback. When a head coaching change happens, I think that is the ultimate out for any team to make a move. We can't pass judgment when Cliff Kingsbury took the job and then he went and got Kyler Murray. We're like, well, you know what? Rosen wasn't his guy, so I understand it. You're the one calling the plays. This is your system. This is your team. The same thing with Ron Rivera. As much as I love Dwayne Haskins, if there were to be some move made, I couldn't look at Ron Rivera and say you're out of your mind. I would look at him and say, you know what? You came in and you have to make decisions based on what you feel is best for the team.
There's also an opportunity cost there, of course. If you are going to take one of these quarterbacks, meeting with Tua and Burrow, you're passing on maybe the best player.